Welcome everyone, Simon here from the Wales of Wall Street, a quant update video for you guys today. We'll keep it short and sweet, hopefully. Don't forget to check out the other videos on the channel, loads of different projects and topics that we talk about all the time. Trying to get as many videos as done as possible in spare time and each day, so do let us know if there's any that you want us to cover specifically that we're not already doing so. But yes, hopefully you enjoy all that content and educational pieces. Of course, don't forget as well to smash that subscribe button if you have not done so already. Let's go straight into this one. So Quant, one of my favorite projects. I think I say that in most videos, but Quant is definitely one that stands out for me as a massive, humongous opportunity in the enterprise sectors. We know its availability in amongst the massive financial institutions, the banks out there. I've been fortunate to meet most of their team at various different digital pound events in London. These guys know what they're doing, let's put it that way. So for those that don't know or are new to Quant or don't have a full understanding, you can obviously watch some of the previous videos and the introductory videos I've done in the past. But generally speaking, this is a project in particular that very much heavily focuses on the likes of interoperability and mainly across chains. So pulling chains together as well as Quant working with those chains individually in a seamless fashion. So all those DLTs out there coming together where you might have a kind of multi-chain application opportunity, different blockchain languages, different codings, particularly for the Overledger. Overledger was a big part that we mentioned here on the left-hand side that Quant launched over the last sort of 12 months or so that really infiltrates this area. I guess blockchain agnostic would be a good terminology when it comes to describing its place in the blockchain space, for sure. So the interoperability aspects will be very important when we look at, obviously, not just in the finance side of things, but also multiple sectors. One of the key things I think is quite interesting, not really talked about too much, the likes of healthcare. So, hospitals and organizations needing essentially secure and interoperable information, but also things like potentially the supply chain and procurement to that, and sharing data, information, not necessarily of just hospitals, but patients as well. So we talked about that in previous videos when we did some videos on like Solve Care, for example, looking at particularly the EHRs. I think that stands for the electronic health records, if I remember correctly. These things have a lot of privacy aspects to it because us as patients. However, there could be unlocking of that between hospitals to ensure that the patient's needs and requirements are improved and provided in the best way possible. A lot of the time, you could go to like one doctor's surgery and your information or health information hasn't been transferred across to your next doctor's surgery, as an example, or even dentist, whatever, and you find that information could be quite critical, especially if something is related to maybe genetics or something that's evolved from something before. There's so many things, and I think we could go down a big storyline like we did with some of the IOTA videos and things in the past. AI's integration with this, about image recognition, machine learning, being able to detect things earlier or more efficiently, and even in a genetic format. It really does pull itself together to enhance and interlace all of this together. Healthcare is obviously one example. You could go all day long talking about IoT in general, data-driven systems, cloud systems, government, of course, in terms of transparency of supply chain, which is a big thing about blockchain, its ability to be transparent, albeit maybe governments don't want to be too transparent on those side of things. We've got the smart city integrations, transportation. The list is endless, absolutely humongous. In terms of like the actual residual or monetary value of that, it's very hard to quantify to an extent. But I did pull out some numbers earlier. Blockchain market potentially projected to be around 4.14 trillion by 2030. That's not related to the market cap, guys, that we see on CoinMarketCap. This is about the residual value of the market of blockchain by 2030. 1.4 trillion, that's huge. I think it'd be bigger than that, to be honest. Interoperability in that aspect, in terms of banking and finance, could represent around $22 trillion as of now. It's probably more than that. That was a stat from 2022. So it'd be absolutely phenomenal numbers there. Governments and enterprises, of course, implementing blockchain at this moment in time, as are businesses in general across the world, whether you're small or large, whether it's supply chain, the identity management, data sharing, smart contracts, documentation, you name it. If Quant can capture even a small share of this rapidly expanding market opportunity through its Overledger technology and all its partnerships, its integrations it's got currently, its frameworks that it's building. Look at all the things that are going on with Project Rosalind and all of these going on with the BIS, the International Settlements Company or Organization for Worldwide Finance. Wow, you could be talking about hundreds upon hundreds of billions of dollars, maybe trillions, in terms of potential value that could be unlocked via Quant. Now, that's not to say the Quant token's going to be billions of pounds, obviously, but it can definitely demonstrate some changes in price over this period of time. Not necessarily has to be right now, but certainly in the future, because Quant is actually quite a high value price. We'll go into the chart in a minute, but I think it's around about $100 at the moment. That perception is quite high when you look at the values of many other crypto assets out there sitting around $1, $5, you name it, right? And then there's crypto assets that are in their thousands, as we know. So there's lots of demonstrative aspects as to why that is, where it could get to in the future, obviously demonstrating as well previous market areas that we've looked at with Quant in the past. But we'll get to that point shortly. But for me, Quant is definitely possibly maybe even a leader in the interoperable aspect. It's got some phenomenal partnerships, not just with other chains already, but as I said, its integration already worldwide with real world utility is a really key thing for me as an investor to really get a hold of and understand more prominently than any other point relating to blockchain. You can see here, for example, some of the chains that it's already interlaced with. There's so many more, but it's going to be that overarching framework that I think is really interesting. I'll leave an article link to this. This is really interesting scholarship information here. Blockchain technology applications, healthcare. Really cool points in there. But looping back to Quant as an overall topic, I think it's one that I've had in my portfolio for some time. I'm really excited about the future developments for sure. Of Quant. I mean, the Quant token itself, of course, that's being the native utility token of the Quant Network ecosystem overall. That allows you the access to Overledger. It allows the licensing fees aspect as well, the transaction fees. So using Quant to pay that fee in the Overledger network, and the ability for developers to not only build with Quant, but also the staking application as well. So I'm talking about an enterprise kind of business level here, guys. It's very rare that you would use Quant yourself to build unless you've had access to the Overledger portals. It shows you how not necessarily closed doors it is, but if you think of Solana, it's very easy for anyone and everyone really to jump on that network and build and develop. With Quant, it's so much more difficult and more enterprise driven. So they're two completely separate things, obviously, in terms of technology and abilities and reasonings as to why you would use one network or chain over the other. So for me, and in fact, we'll just jump into the chart. Actually, we'll talk about this in a bit more detail. For me, that kind of price point of Quant will be dictated by a lot of these things. First of all, how many more projects and companies come in over these next few years that need the Quant token to be able to develop and create things on the Overledger and formulate further advancements in the interoperable aspect. But in my opinion, that 2025 to sort of 2028 or 2030, the next cycle in 4 or 5 years time, will very much depend on all of that. And the opening up of not just the sectors we talked about like healthcare, etc., but really opening and integrating and full adoption in other sector areas. Done some videos earlier on Powerledger, for example, how big that energy sector is. All of these will need to eventually talk to each other, or at some point will need to talk to each other. And it's companies like Quant that can really bridge this together, that interoperable aspect. So the price points of Quant are very much open door policy, to be honest, in my opinion. The previous all-time high back up here in 2021 at $429. It's only four times from now. $100. So some could argue that that's not gigantic, but valuation wise it could be. I was buying a lot of Quant when it was back down here around this sort of 63. I think it was like $44 I picked up a batch as well. Unless I'm going crazy. It certainly wasn't back in 2022, but it was certainly more recently last year. Maybe just floating around that $50-$60 mark. Apologies. So it's around the low marks, adding to the bag, which took me a long time to build because at the time when I was initially involved in quants accumulation in my portfolio, the price was already quite high. It was like 120 or something. I didn't really do anything with my quant in this market up here, which in hindsight was a bit silly, but that's a learning for the next cycle, right? I'm well prepared next time, or hopefully for this year in 2025, to take advantage of some of those bigger moves if they come, that is. So I think for general consensus that I've been putting in the videos this week is a lot of these kind of older legacy projects that have been around for a long time, it's not got the excitement right now that AI and meme coins and things like that have. However, I do believe that money that's made in those areas will either be lost because people don't know how to invest properly, or spend that money, or they go and chase something else similar and lose all the money profits that they made. I do believe that a general consensus, majority of that money will pile back into the legacy projects like Quant, like Bitcoin, Ethereum, etc. It will just loop back around because projects like Quant are the ones that are going to be standing around forever. Well, I say forever, but at least the next 20, 30 years, right? Because we're so early in the development stages of blockchain, the integration of it. And Quant, yes, okay, it's been around with the token for a number of years now, like many others have, but the actual integration is still in that legislative process. It's still in that learning process, the integration process. So there's so many things that need to align. So 2025 could definitely see like maybe an organic growth in the Quant token, as I think more people will start talking about it again and marketing, etc., etc. Quant, by the way, doesn't market too much about the Quant token. It's more interested in enterprise guys. Not all of these projects are here for us retail investors. Part of them don't even care. It's the fact the availability of the Quant token is available through cryptography and exchanges, right? For developers to be able to gain extra and easier access. Something has to formulate that, and that's what blockchain was built for, or partially anyway. So we can think maybe 2025, we could potentially get to that previous all-time high and maybe start looking at some of the higher regions, maybe towards 700 or the $1,000 mark. I don't think that's too far-fetched. Let me know what you think in the comments below. This really depends, as I said, on all those kind of factors and variables. Forget the adoption and the integration, because I think that's something you would probably look more towards beyond 2025. So in November this year, the RTGS system gets switched on. The new ISO compliance is fully integrated pretty much globally of 222. And then, of course, you've just got that kind of wave after that of trialing, testing, seeing how things are going as time goes by. And then eventually anything and everything will be fully integrated, including AI and IoT and all the other things that we talk about on the channel a multitude of times. So by 2028 and into, 2030, this is where we might see those sort of $2,000+ marks for Quant. It really depends, because one, on fractionalization of QNT, what is needed for the development, how much more development is needed for the next few years, how much Quant is needed for that. That will also be a derivative there, not just the marketing and the excitement that we get as investors in the markets. We also need to think about these other things of how the actual tokens work and how the projects are perceiving themselves in these years to come. So there's definitely loads of things to think about, but I don't think it's too far-fetched to say that we could get to that $700 to $1,000 mark in 2025. Beyond that, I personally think that we'll see these higher numbers in the next cycle in a few years' time. We'll have to see. But it is promising to see that already at this stage, which I'm not going to do too many comparisons to what the chart looked like in 2021. It's a completely different ballgame right now. However, what I would say is that if we are at these beginning stages of 2025 in a bull cycle or a bull run, we're already ahead of the game with where we were before. So you could argue that there's a good 25% difference in the price point of where we are at the beginning stages. We could even be at these lower stages at 30, 40, which is way beyond percentage wise. So that could insinuate that maybe we might go higher if you think about it in X's format, and how much increase in value that is. But for the time being, they're the key target areas for me. Selling, especially the kind of token prices of 60, 70 that I got into, I'm not really interested at anything under the $200 mark, I will be looking again around these sort of 320, 400 marks. It may or may not come in. Let's see. Because I just don't really see the point in doubling my money, as it were. Not even taking out the initial investments, kind of pointless for me personally. Everyone comes in at different stages, right? But in these middle levels are really important areas of potential resistance and opportunity for corrections and other areas to drop back in. So for me, where we're looking at those higher regions up here, the sort of, let's just go with this one, for example, 703. Before we get to that point, we've got loads of different markers, both on the longer term ones that I've done in videos, a couple years ago and up to this year, as well as the short term ones. We've just got to pay attention to those. So if I was to draw in, for example, one of the highest points here and one of the lowest points more recently, you'll see what I mean. If we zoom in, you'll see it's not always fully 100% accurate, because that's why when we DCAing, we always put a number of buying and selling slightly lower or higher than these fib levels, because they never really go on like the actual dot. There's so many things you have to align to make it fully accurate. And if we did that too much, I think it would just look like a coincidental video, if you know what I mean. So you can see here, you get my drift here. It's floating around this kind of area of 116. It couldn't quite sustain itself. The market dropped anyway in the last 48 hours. So it's pulled itself back down to there. If we see some sideways movement here with not a lot of traction or incoming money into the market of quant, we will probably see maybe a dilution towards that 84, 87 mark again. It sounds a bit bearish, but it's definitely a possibility. So something where we like, okay, we might want to put some buy orders in here, because eventually at some point that will relate itself back up here. And when that full swing comes in 2025 that we're all hoping and anticipating, we can definitely make double your money moves in such a short space of time. And in fact, 130 all the way down to 90 is a pretty interesting option if you are one of those day traders or regular traders out there. Some good money could have been made depending on when you got in for quant and what price points, etc., etc. We've already been through that. So they're the things to align with. If we can sustain ourselves in these areas, that's when we can start retesting these higher ones. For me personally, I think that we really need to gauge with this particular area of interest a couple more times before we venture up to the 178s, the 203s and the 243s as the next stages. Why? Because we need stability at these kind of areas, something that it could not do in this moment. Forget this area really, because last year was no kind of proper cycle going on at all. This is all related merely for rumors around Overledger, etc. But when we came back in this run that we're on with the whole market, we could only get as far as this. So we have to retest this area. By doing so, we need to come above it, have a bit of traction around here, probably hitting this area here, and then tracing back down to hit this. Is there going to be resistance, i.e. pushing back up, or are we going to see a pull down where we'll probably see this area? So this will play out over the next few months, in my opinion. I've always earmarked April as an area of interest, because we've got the inauguration of Donald Trump in January, in a couple of weeks' time. Over a 2-3 month period of that, we might see a fluctuation immediately after, who knows? But typically, when these kind of things happen, you have a 2 or 3 month remit of things going on. Of course, in April here in the UK as well is financial end years for most companies, businesses, self-employed people, etc., etc. Money could be flowing around May time when extra dividends are available or money is available from tax, etc. So there's loads of things going on in the background, interest rates, all of that going on. And that's not even including what quant is potentially going to do in this period of time as well, in terms of information, marketing, opportunity. So I know I've drawn a load of squiggles here. I'm going to leave them on there because I think this is a great reference point for the next quant video. Let us know what you think in the comments below about predictions, pricing, what you think about the year in general for quant. At the moment, the RSI on the bottom left hand here is around the 40 mark. This is a good buy point, which would indicate that we're just squeezing out this drop that we've had. It's now about the next move. Will we drop lower to retest the 87? Will we sustain this $100 and therefore go and retest the 117 again over these coming weeks? Let's see how it plays out. I'm really interested and eager as always. Keeping it under 20 minutes, trying to do that more often. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next quant update video. Take care. Bye-bye.